Hi everybody. This video is for the refuah shlema of Michael Ben Fredel, a friend of mine's son in the IDF, and for all the IDF soldiers who need a refuah shlema. So we're going to compare Noah and Abraham. Now they're very different personalities. People like to compare them, but they're very different personalities. I see Noah as an introvert and Abraham as an extrovert. But let's start with the Parsha of Noah. So the Sefer HaChinuch says there are no new mitzvot mentioned in this Parsha, just a repetition of be fruitful and multiply, because Noah was nervous after the flood should he have more kids, because God just wiped off everybody off the face of the earth. Is it worth having more children? And God says, don't worry, I'm not going to do that again. Go ahead and have kids. So it's a repetition of the last mitzvah from the last parsha, but it's in a different context, obviously. Now, Noah is described in three ways. He's a tzaddik, and it seems, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the word tzaddik is only mentioned here by Noah, not anywhere else in the Torah. He's the only one in the whole Torah mentioned with the word he was a tzaddik. So that's interesting. He's the one who restarts the world, so he must be worthwhile, right? Tamim, he was perfect, and he walked with God. Those are the three ways he's mentioned in the Torah. So we can say, he's a very important character here. If you're going to restart the world, you need a good, solid person to do that with. Now, the complaints about Noah is that when we compare him to Abraham, he didn't go out to save the people. He didn't go out and say, hey people, God's going to destroy the world. Get your act together. I'm building a boat over here. If you want on the boat, you got to get your act together. He didn't go out and do that. And it doesn't seem like, we don't see in the text, that he prayed for them either. So we know that Abraham did that later on in the next parsha. But we know that God started the world over with Noah. So those are some of the complaints about Noah, but let's pretend for a second that what I'm saying, it makes sense here. I think it makes sense here, that he was an introvert. And it's not in him to do that sort of thing. He's not going to go out and say, hey guys, let's get our act together. Chop, chop. He's not going to do that. That's not his style. That's not his personality. So God works with his personality. God doesn't say, hey, go out and do that. He doesn't even say that at all. He says, go build an ark. Okay, so it takes 120 years to build that ark. And what's interesting is I love bringing people from history to learn from. Rabbeinu Bachya ben Asher lived from 1255 to 1340. And he says, the reason it took 120 years to build this ark, I don't know how long it takes to build arks, but it must have been an exorbitant amount of time, was that God hoped that people would go and see, why is Noah building this ark for so long? What's he doing? Why is he spending his time on this? He must have been a known person, right? If he's an outstanding person in a corrupt generation, people must have known about him. So the idea, Rabbeinu Bachya says, the idea was that it would attract people's attention. Hey, Noah, what are you doing? And he would get them into a conversation and say, hey, we need to do tshuva. We need to repent. We need to get ourselves back on the right track. But it seems nobody did that. But he was doing as an introvert what was comfortable for him, and God only asked him to do what was comfortable for him. So even though there are these complaints against Noah for not being like Abraham, really he's his own person, right? We can really only judge people within who they are in their time period. I don't know if it's fair to them to compare them to other people when they're just different people, different personalities. Now, why was the world destroyed? Now, something I read was from aish.com, which is a great website, aish.com, by Rabbi Zev Rudman. And he points out 2 crimes that were the impetus for God destroying the world: larceny and rape. So he points to these 2 things as why God destroyed the world. So these are 2 crimes of a person going out and taking what isn't theirs, right? Larceny and rape are taking things that aren't yours, if that person doing those things. Now, maybe, this is my thinking, God picked Noah specifically because he was an introvert, because the extrovert energy in the world had been corrupted. Because if people are raping and stealing, there's an extrovert energy there that is just corrupt, if people think that any of that is okay. So maybe the introvert, Noah, had to be the one, not an extrovert like Abraham, to restart the world, because he had boundaries, internal boundaries. His energies, the world needed to restart with an introvert, not an extrovert. Now, let's move on to the extrovert, Abraham, who's still in the beginning of the parsha of Lech Lecha, still called Avram. So there is one mitzvah in this parsha of Lech Lecha. It's circumcision. It's the Brit Milah, the covenant we have with God, that is still with us today, right? So Avram comes 10 generations after Noah. He follows Noah by 10 generations. He comes from Noah's son, Shem. Because remember, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. And the Jewish people come through Shem, through Avram, and we have the Jewish people. So in the beginning of Lech Lecha, God says to Avram, the famous words, Lech Lecha, go out for yourself. Go out from your father's home to the land I will show you. The special land that we still, thank God, have under our control today. So he goes with his wife, Sarai, his nephew Lot, and the souls he made. And we say, souls he made? What are we talking about here? These are called converts. These are the people whose souls he brought closer to God. So he recognized God, and he wanted to bring people closer to God too. He's an extrovert. You don't go converting people unless you are confident in what you believe and you're willing to go out and talk to people. He's an extrovert. Now, that was his mission, bringing people closer to God. Now, later in the parsha, we see that God's about to destroy Sodom, and Gomorrah. And he says, and there's that whole conversation God has with Avram that says, I'm about to destroy this. And the whole conversation, what if there's somebody worth saving there? Avram wants to pray for them. He wants to say, God, are you sure you want to do that? What if there are real good people there? And there's that whole conversation back and forth with God where Avram's arguing with God to save Sodom. This is an extrovert going out and even arguing with God to save people. Now, even the next parsha we'll see the famous story of the angels coming to Avram's tent 3 days after his circumcision. He was an old man. He was in pain. Even if he weren't old, he'd be in pain too. But we see him continuously. He had a tent. Avram and Sarai were known for having a tent open on all 4 sides. Why? Because they wanted to see passers-by, travelers, and invite them in for a meal, for water, whatever. He was known as somebody with hospitality. He wanted to bring people in. So he had the tent open on all sides. Another example of him being an extrovert. He didn't hide himself away, right? So we see extrovert, extrovert, extrovert everywhere here. So we also have the culmination of that extrovert personality, that energy he's got, when God changes their names. Sarai turns into Sarah, okay? The difference is Sarai means my princess, like Avram, Sarai. My princess is a personal princess, you're mine. Versus Sarah, which is the princess. So it universalizes that name. She is the world's princess, right? So that's an extroverted name for the world, not just for one person, her husband, but for the world. It's an extroverted name. Now, Avram goes from Avram to Avraham in Hebrew. So in Hebrew, it's kind of a contraction for Av Hamon Goyim. So this is the father of Hamon Goyim, of many nations. So this is what happens is the name change reflects God's recognition of the extrovert energy of these two people. Right? It's an interesting thing. It's a reflection of who they are. They already were extroverts, but the name change really identifies their mission. It's when God says, okay, go out from your father's house and go bring, go to a land I'll show you, because now he's going to become the beginning of the Jewish people through Isaac and Jacob, through that line. So the extrovert power of Abraham and Sarai is coming to fix the mistakes of the extrovert generation of Noah. The extrovert power, energy of that Noah generation was terrible. Larceny and rape, taking things that don't belong to you, is obviously not okay and not acceptable. So God says, look, here's Abraham and Sarah who will fix that energy. Now what's interesting is Abraham is known for his chesed, loving kindness. Chesed is the Hebrew for loving kindness. It's even more than that. But just the loving kindness, doing a chesed for somebody. Here's an example of a real chesed. Is sometimes we do chesed for people and we hope we get something back from them later. Oh, I'll do this a favor for them, and they'll do me a favor later. But there's something called chesed shel emet. And chesed shel emet is when somebody dies and you have to purify the body before it gets buried. A real chesed is when you know there's no payback. You're doing a chesed for this person who's gone, who will never do anything for you. Chesed shel emet. Emet is truth. A real chesed, a true chesed, is doing a chesed for someone who's passed away, because you were not getting anything back. You know it. But taking care of the body, being respectful, and doing what you need to do to let them get buried properly is a chesed shel emet. So Avraham is known for his chesed. Okay? So his extrovert energy is being connected to the chesed. It's not just pure extrovert energy, doing whatever you want, taking whatever you want, doing whatever you want. It's connected to the chesed part, which becomes a giver. An extrovert energy connected to real chesed makes a person a giver. When you become a giver, you transcend just the giving, just the taking part of the extrovert. You want to be a giver. We want to be like Abraham. We want to transcend our regular old self. Oh, what can I get? What can I get? Oh, that person has that. I want that too. I don't have that new iPhone. I want that too. The only thing we should want is to be able to give. We want to give. We want to be givers. And the root word of love is hav, is to give. Because by giving, we create love and connection between people, right? So the point is, extrovert energy can be good, can be a good thing, but it needs to be connected to chesed, being a giver. Because those two things together, chesed is loving kindness. So we need the extrovert energy plus the loving kindness equals being a giver. So anyway, that's what I've got today. But it was interesting because I thank God the idea popped in my head, and I played it out and I read about it and I studied it a little bit, and I hope this makes sense. Because all of us are different. I don't like when people knock Noah because he wasn't as great as Abraham, or it seems that way. But God wouldn't have restarted the world with Noah if he wasn't the one to restart the world. But we have to understand that introverts have a place to give and do and be a part of this project of the world, being a part of the world, making this world a better place. You know, God gave us values to run with, and we're running with them, and we're trying to bring the world to a better place through those values and mitzvot. So if you're an introvert, there's so much to do. And if you're an extrovert, there's so much to do. But remember, even if you don't do all of it, we're not required to do all of it. But we can't, like Pirkei Avot say, walk away from it. We have our stuff to do. Do it. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a great Shabbat and a good week ahead. Take care.